On this week's podcast, we talked to a 4-time Olympic medalist and a 3-time world record breaker in the 100-meter backstroke. 1988 and 1992, those of you who swam remember his name, David Berkoff, famous for the Berkoff blastoff.
Bold, blind, and Buddhist.
TGIF, Timmy, how the hell are you, my blind friend?
It's good. I've got my mug root beer, John. One of the best root beers. If you're going to drink something brown, sugary, and fizzy, may as well be a mug.
I got to go A&W on that one, but I get what you're saying. And in fact, my daughter has really gravitated towards root beer, so we've actually had taste tests. So, and we kind of seem to lean towards A&W, but it might be a territorial thing.
Peter wants to do that. We have some in the house. We might try it. So,
well, I have to tell you real quick before I introduce the guest. We did a blind taste test of beer, a bunch of guys in my neighborhood, and we had Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light, and Natty Light. And there was another one in there. To a man, and there was like 6 of us. We all picked Natty Light.
No way.
Taste test. Swear. Natty Light. All of us. It's very refreshing.
I used to have this trick I would do. There were 2 soda machines, a Pepsi and a Coke, that would, at the place where I did research as an undergrad. And the trick was one machine spit out the Coke a little warmer than the Pepsi. And my trick was I could identify which was Coke and Pepsi by the can.
Oh, yeah.
By feeling it, but no one would know. I would act like I could identify which can it was just by, oh, that's Pepsi, it's Coke. But it was just the temperature difference. So anyways.
Well, we had that discussion about Coke Zero versus Diet Coke. I mean, civil wars have started over less.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But Timmy, I've said this line before, but I'm going to say it again. It's been noted that it's dangerous to meet your heroes, but I'm willing to chance it because on the line with us, swimming is a very, very territorial sort of cadre sport, if you will, Timmy, as you know. I swam all the way through high school. I am in no way, shape, or form comparing myself to our guest. But he's about 10 years older than you and I, as I grew up watching sports. And during the Olympics, if you notice, the first week is always swimming, and then the second week is track and field because that's what brings eyeballs to the television for the Summer Olympics. And I remember watching him in 1988 in the Seoul Olympics and in 1992 at the Barcelona Olympics. So without further ado, let me introduce one of my heroes, David Berkoff, famous for the Berkoff blastoff. So David, welcome to the Bold, Blind, and Buddies podcast. How's your Friday going, good sir?
It's going great. I'm very honored to be here.
We're glad to have
you. Do you get invited for this kind of thing with some regularity from people? Or is it just sort of every once in a while?
It's funny because as I've gotten older, I've become less and less relevant. And
happens to all of us, sir.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny. In my mind, I'm still pretty important.
In high school, right?
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Me too.
I think society in general just has a really short memory. I tell my daughter, and I'm sure you can talk about my daughter,
Catherine Berkoff, for those who don't know, also an Olympian.
Ride this wave because it doesn't last very long, and especially in Olympic sports where we only get the headlines for a brief moment every 4 years.
And it's funny. Let me just embarrass you a little bit because you broke the world record not once, not twice, but 3 times. They changed the rules in the sport of swimming because of you. And the only person I can think that even compares to that is Bob Gibson. He was so dominant in the late 60s that they lowered the pitching mound. They outlawed the Berkoff blastoff, which I'll ask you about as my first question.
Deacon Jones, too, in football.
What happened with Deacon Jones?
He was I think he was a DB or linebacker, and when the receiver would head down the field,
he'd pull his arm and just
he would hit him in the head just as they went by, and so they outlawed the Deacon Jones slap.
That seems like a reasonable. That seems like that's not based on athletic prowess. That's just based on pure unadulterated violence.
Yeah.
But David, how did a kid from southeastern Pennsylvania like myself end up in Montana first and foremost? And tell us a little bit about the Berkoff blastoff for those that listen that are swimmers. I know a few that are going to be listening that actually swam with you, John Mendel. Hello, John. Tell us about the Berkoff blastoff and how the physics of that came to be. And then secondarily, how did a kid from southeastern PA up in Montana?
Sure, that's a long story. Maybe take longer than our podcast, but the long story short, I went to Harvard as an undergrad, and I don't think Harvard's known for any athletic prowess other than squash and crew, and so I went there, and I had an opportunity to go to Cal and also to Virginia, and I turned scholarships down there because I didn't want the pressure of having to go to practice. I was not exactly the hardest trainer in high school, and I only went to I, mostly because I lived on the other side of town from the place where I was on the club. So I never had gone to a morning practice until I went to college. And I struggled my first year or so at Harvard just to adapt and understand that I actually belonged there. I had an inferiority complex. So I think my coach at the time really tried to understand me and understood I had a lot of talent, but perhaps not a lot of follow through or confidence. And one of the things he told me was like, I think your underwater kick is really good. I want to start playing with this at practice where we work on underwater dolphin kick on your back, but we're only going to do it at the end of practice. So you have to come for the whole practice. So I really liked doing it, and I liked the underwater, and I liked the idea of trying something new and different in the sport. And that actually was, I think, a method to get me to come to practice more than anything. And it turned out to be a weapon that we developed over a 3-4 year period.
And just to set the visual, I'm not minimizing it, sir, but you're not the typical swimmer build of Michael Phelps, Matt Biondi, Gary Hall, those guys that are all 6'5" and above, 6'6" and 6'7" and so forth. You're, for lack of a better term, more of a normal sized guy who just had a heart the size of an elephant, right? I mean, that could do this underwater kick. I mean, and they changed the sport. You have to come up after 15 yards. They shortened it to 10 at one point, and then they extended it to 15. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you used to be able to basically do, 50 meters almost, or 47 meters underwater?
Yeah, I would go in the long course pool, 50-meter pool. I would do 35 meters underwater surface, swim to the wall, flip, and
it was
come
like
back
2 strokes, and then you were done, right? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, so I think they changed it to 10 after 88 and realized that people were really struggling to get up in 10 meters, especially the tall guys, and they extended it to 15. But now everybody is doing 15 meters off the start and the turn, men and most women, most of the top women, and even in freestyle and fly events. So it's the underwater dolphin kick has revolutionized how swimming is and how fast swimming is.
And it was just your coach. There wasn't like a physicist at Harvard that sat down with you and said, "Hey, hydrodynamics says do this." It was just.
I think we understood the intuitively that swimming underwater, there was less drag than breaking surface tension and thrashing on the surface. The only problem was you weren't breathing. So you had to train for it. And I did a lot of underwater training, a lot of hypoxic training, which I know coaches frown on that as being dangerous, but if it's done right, it's necessary. And so this might sound like an alien idea to people who aren't swimmers, but I could do 1650s underwater dolphin kick on my back in a long course pool, 50-meter pool on a minute. And
good God.
My heart rate would never go over 100. And I'd probably repeat them on 38 to 40 seconds. And that was the first.
It's almost like those deep water divers that do one breath.
Yeah.
You were ahead of the game on that, huh?
Yeah. So, and then FINA changed the rules in FINA is the governing body of swimming is now World Aquatics. They changed the rules in 88. And one of the things they said was, well, it's dangerous. And I said, well, really? Holding your breath for 17 seconds is dangerous when you've got these artistic swimmers holding their breath for almost a minute and a half? And they really didn't have a response to that. And I think it was such a radical idea at the time. And to see, a 5'10.5", 150-pound kid destroying these monster-sized swimmers that they're used to seeing be the dominant athlete, I think that just upset the apple cart a little too much. So,
how quickly did you get the signal that this was going to be something? Because people try all kinds of things. Like how quickly did you realize that this was a good strategy? I
think probably my sophomore year in college, I got third at NCAAs, and to me that was a terrible disappointment. I wanted to win, but it was the first time I think people were seeing how much it was giving me an advantage, and then the copycats started. And so by the time I swam my senior year, everybody was going almost the first 15, 20 meters underwater to try and maximize speed for as long as you could.
So what was your reaction then when they made the rule change? You're like, oh crap, like there goes an edge, or were you like, wow?
When did they officially change it, by the way? Was it after the 88 or was it after the 92?
It was after 88.
And did you medal at 92? I know you,
Yeah.
yeah. I know you had 4 medals, 1 gold, and I'm trying to remember, and I know you broke the world record 3 times. I'm just trying to remember just on my memory of the 92 performance.
Yeah, I won a silver and a gold in 88, and a bronze and a gold in 92, gold in the relay, swimming the prelims, and a bronze swimming the 100 backstroke. So I had to basically relearn how to swim 100 meters backstroke after 88 when they changed the rules. I had to go from a kick dominant swimmer to an upper body strength swimmer, and I looked at it as a challenge. I thought to myself, I'm going to prove to everybody that I can do it my way or their way, and that was kind of I always tell people my favorite medal that I have of the 4 is my bronze medal from 92, because it was kind of I told you I could
still do it without the kick.
Yeah.
Where are those medals hanging in your house, just out of curiosity? Don't tell me in the attic.
They're not in the attic, but they're not hanging up anywhere.
Really?
Safe deposit box, or what?
Why is that?
Yeah,
why don't you celebrate? I mean, Lance Armstrong. Now, granted, he cheated, but he has 7, yellow jerseys in his man cave there. If you see a video of his house,
yeah,
it should be a conversation starter, and especially in a place as somewhat remote as Missoula, Montana, right? Do people know you there as being an Olympian, or just as being an attorney?
Missoula is kind of a laid-back place. People know my background, or if they don't know, their friends know, and they tell them or remind them, and like, oh yeah. And but this is a kind of a place where it's a small city, but it's a small town too, and so what you've done in life doesn't really matter. I mean, it might impress people to some degree, but it's who you are that really matters.
That's cool.
So. And, I break out my medals and show people every once in a while, but.
Well, when I'm in Bozeman next time, I'm driving up to Missoula to see it. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm just telling you. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. The 2 medals from 88, I kind of keep them squirreled away. They're kind of sacred. They're my first medals. And then my 2 from Barcelona are my fun medals. So I let, they've probably been handled by 10,000 people. I would, everybody gets to hold those medals.
I have those too, but mine are from A-level championships. So, yeah. How did, just out of curiosity, going back to my earlier question, how did a kid from Southeastern PA, because you ended up getting a master's degree in environmental science, if I'm not mistaken, or something along those lines, ecology, at the University of Montana, and then, and my daughter, or my sister, my niece is a sophomore at Montana State. That's the one in near Bozeman.
Yep.
Yeah. And I guess her team just won the championship in football this past year.
I know. It was like the first time I've ever cheered for the Bobcats.
Right.
I was like,
but
okay,
how did you end up there?
If the Grizz can't win, the Bobcats got to win. Bring it, keep the trophy in Montana. I always knew that I wouldn't stay in Pennsylvania. I love Pennsylvania. I loved where I grew up. I feel like I was a really lucky kid. I feel like I was one of the. I feel as a Gen Xer, I'm one of the last latchkey kids. Kids don't have that opportunity now, where they're. My mom went back to law school when I was 10, and she was 40, and she would just kick the door open in the summer and say, okay, kids, go to the swim pool and swim, or go fishing at Mason's Mill Pond, and be back by dinner. And we wouldn't wear helmets. We'd ride our bikes down to the pond or go to the swim club and swim. And we did whatever we wanted as long as we stayed out of trouble. But I always knew that I wanted to be in a place with big open spaces and giant, large megafauna that could eat you. I was fascinated by the West all growing up, and I was kind of a trout fishing nut, so I knew I would move out West. And I knew when my swimming career was done, I wanted to do something. I needed to have something to strive for. And so I applied to environmental studies master's program here at Montana, not knowing if I'd stay and who knows what I'd do next, but I'd come out here for at least a few years and play around in the woods and get a degree. So that's what I did. And then I ended up meeting my former wife, and we had kids, and and then you got to figure out a career living in Montana. And so I went to law school. So that's how I landed in Montana and ended up staying. And it's home now. Been here for over 30 years. So it's grown on me to the point where I don't think I'd want to permanently move somewhere else.
Yeah, that's amazing. The last best place? Is that what they call it? That's what my sister calls it.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit in the last 30 plus years that I've been here. The population's grown, especially
it's California East now, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it's that bad.
That's what my brother says, but he likes people even less than most. So
I'd say Bozeman's more California-ish. It has more of the resorts and brings in the tech money and
Yellowstone, the television success of that show didn't help either, right?
No. I'd say Missoula's a little bit more subdued, a little more mellow, a little less ostentatious. Although Kalispell, I'll tell you, Kalispell is the fastest growing city in the state right now. And that place has gotten nuts.
It's happening. But luckily, she lives on a few acres outside of town, so
yeah.
Well, you mentioned your daughters, and I know your kids, son and daughter. They swim. We've had athletes on, and they've talked about how things are so different for their children than their experiences. Have you noticed that? How has the sport changed? How has training changed? What do you
people about the same age as you, David? Because that's about how old Wes Pritchett would be, right? Timmy about 60. Yeah, his son's at Alabama, tight end at Alabama.
Yeah, he says it's night and day.
And real quick, David, before I forget, the joke about Notre Dame is, how do you know somebody went to Notre Dame? You talk to them for 5 minutes and they'll tell you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I did notice you dropped Harvard quite quickly.
People from Harvard never drop Harvard.
Yeah,
they're almost
really?
People from Harvard are almost embarrassed they went there. I noticed when I was at Harvard, I joined the outing club, and that was my way of getting away from swim practice for a weekend. I could tell my coach, hey, I'm going out with the outing club this weekend. There's really nothing he could do. It was a non-scholarship team, so as long as I was doing enough, I could get away with it. But I would go out on these outing club trips, and we'd go up to northern New Hampshire and go backpacking for the weekend, and we end up crashing into a Pizza Hut to get some food after a long backpacking trip. They say, "Oh, where are you guys from? Are you part of an outing club?" And "Oh yeah, we're in New England." And they're like, "What school?" And they're like, after about 10 questions, we'd find, we're the Harvard outing club. And it was almost like we were embarrassed. So, which is really weird. Why would you be embarrassed to be going to a great school? I don't know. It was an odd situation. So when you make that joke about Notre Dame, I was like, wow, it's good that you have pride about where you went, because I don't think many of my classmates had a lot of pride about where they went, or at least didn't want to tell people.
At this point, it's just because it drives some of our listeners. We have some pretty dedicated listeners, all 12 of them, but right, dozens and dozens. But we make it a point to, hey, by the way, did you know Timmy graduated from what's that school again? Oh yeah, Notre Dame. We just do it at this point on purpose.
Clickbait.
And I joke all the time that literally my proudest achievement is my marriage and my children. But if Notre Dame wins a national title, I'm not saying that's not the proudest moment, but I am saying I'm also not saying that. So So, but going back to Timmy's question, tell us a little bit about your children, because you got interest. Both of them swam. Your son is now all over the world, right? And of course, Catherine is an Olympian from NC State. So why don't you brag on your children for a few minutes?
Okay, I will. Let me tell you a little bit about the process with my kids. I coached both of them. I was the head coach of the Missoula Aquatic Club for about 10 years, and I got to coach both of them almost all the way through high school. At some point, I just said it's too much to be coach and dad, and so I had my assistant take over for me, and he's done a great job since. But they grew up around swimming, and they grew up around Olympic athletes. I would bring kids in, a lot of Olympians have stayed in my house, and over the years, because I bring them here for clinics, and I'd say, we'll pay you to come do this clinic, and then we'll take you fly fishing. And of course, they were like, oh, there in a second. They'd drop everything and come. So
Timmy and I are there as well the next time.
Feel
free to invite me when you have, Michael Phelps or Gary Hall or those guys in. I'm more than happy to get on a plane.
I can teach the survival float. So.
Actually, Timmy's a black belt. And how many disciplines, Timmy?
Taekwondo and jiu-jitsu.
Oh my gosh.
David. I know you won an Olympic medal and you're a world record holder, but it'd be a race to the finish of who's more impressive on this call, you or Timmy.
David's got it hands down. So,
but yeah, go ahead, brag about your kids.
So my daughter grew up assuming that everybody knew an Olympian. It was so this is her mindset. So she had this great advantage, I think, compared to her competitors, that this was normal. Like being an Olympian was normal, and so when she was incredibly driven all the way through middle school and high school, and I would have to like hold her back. She wanted to join the swim team when she was 4, and I said, no, you can't until you're 5. And then she wanted to go to morning practice when she was 12, and I said, no, not until you're in high school. And
that's clearly from your wife's side, huh? Since you didn't like morning practices.
Who knows where that came from?
I'm much more on your speed, sir.
Yeah. So she's just incredibly driven, and I stayed out of her way mostly. And when during the recruiting process, it was pretty amazing because I told all the coaches that were interested, I said, I don't like this, you talk about change. I didn't commit until I was in my spring of my senior year in high school. I didn't commit to Harvard until then. And now we have kids who are committing when they're freshmen and sophomores, which I think is absolutely crazy. You can't ask a 14 or 15-year-old where they want to go to college. I mean, they don't even know who they're going to ask to junior prom. Right. So I think it's insane. And so I told all these, and I had the luxury because my daughter at the time was the number 3 recruit in the country. And I told all these coaches, I said, don't even ask her to commit. Don't even talk to her until her junior year. She's not committing until she's a senior. And so I told Catherine, you're not committing till you're a senior. And she said, I don't know. I don't even know what college is. I don't know. I'm just swimming. So we came down to about 6 different schools, and I kind of had my pick in my head where she should go. And it was between Stanford and Georgia and Tennessee and NC State and Minnesota, and I had my pick, and my law partner had his pick. He's like, it's Stanford. You got to go to Stanford. Stanford, full ride on Stanford. What are you, crazy? You'd never turn that down. And I said, well, Catherine's a little bit of a different cat. And so I said, Catherine, where are you thinking? She said, NC State. Well, I was shocked. Because my last impression.
Raleigh ain't a bad place to live, David.
Yeah.
But it's not Montana, but my God.
No.
You said before you love Pennsylvania, but you were ready to leave. I love where I live. I live in Westchester. I don't know if you're familiar. And, they film TV shows here and so forth. And it's just a wonderful college town. But if I had my druthers and I would move down south or someplace, my brothers did it right. I married a girl from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So.
Yeah. I said, what about, why NC State? She said, I love the team. I love the coaches. And if I went to Stanford, I know how driven I am. I'd probably be up all night studying to get A's. And I know if I go to a place like NC State, I could probably cruise and get A's. And I'm like, wow. Okay. She's pretty smart too. Yeah. I mean, she was, and I was a little apprehensive, and this is this is where your older prejudices come in, where you have imprints from childhood. The last time I had been in Raleigh was in like 1983, and we were there for a swim meet, and our air conditioner broke, so we called down to the front office of the hotel, and I was like a junior in high school, I think, and a guy comes in to fix our air conditioner, and he rolls up his sleeve, and he's got a swastika tattoo, and I thought, oh my God, I am in the middle of hillbilly hick country. And so that was what I had in the back of my mind of what the South was, being a Northern kid. And so when she chose Raleigh, I thought, oh my God, I've got to go check this place out, or else I'm going to be freaking out, and I went down there and I loved it, absolutely loved it. People in Raleigh were so friendly. It had changed so much. I'm sure they have their bad eggs, but I mean, it was great. And she had a wonderful experience for 4 years, or actually 5 years. She got a COVID year. And it was a dream come true for her. I can't complain.
Wow, that's cool. And how was her experience swimming? Like the training, the suits, how did that differ for how you approached it in the generation prior?
Yeah, I think when I grew up, the training was all long, slow distance. More is better was the mindset. And then, 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out, depending if you're a sprinter or a distance swimmer, you just drop the volume down and that was about it. And then you hope you swim fast. It's so scientific now, and you're training in different zones, heart rate zones, and a lot more focus on strength. The idea of going into the weight room for swimmers, especially distance swimmers, is like, don't even go there. You don't want to get too bulky. You'll sink. And you just look at the athletes now that are in swimming, they're the guys and even the women, they're big. They're big and strong, and way bigger and stronger than I was. And so I'd say the two biggest differences are the volume has been cut dramatically down, even for the longer distance swimmers, and the strength training has gone up, and the intelligence of the training is so much better, and it makes me kind of envious. I wish I had that growing up, and had that type of training, because who knows what I could have done. And also the depth too. The depth of the athleticism nowadays is way more than it was when I was swimming. I mean, not to say there weren't very many good athletes, but I think the training has made it so that athletes who maybe weren't able to handle the long, slow distance training and really kind of rise to the top never did. And now you're seeing coaches being very focused on how they tailor training to each athlete and maximizing what each athlete can do, rather than kind of like, well, this is the program, follow it, and if you can't, you're going to, too bad.
Right, the one size fits all model.
Exactly.
The square peg, round hole. Just that makes sense.
But David, not to embarrass you, you were kind of at the cutting edge of that, because I mean, the Berkoff blastoff, for those that don't know it, you should YouTube it. Is quite remarkable to watch. I remember watching it when I was a kid. So you were kind of at the forefront of that sort of scientific forward thinking too. That's number one. But number two, what was it like? Just because I know a lot of sports, and Timmy and my daughter, I have 3 children. My son is going to be 15, and I have 2 daughters. And my only hope is my youngest. She's a swimmer, and she's gravitated towards backstroke and butterfly, just like her father. I always had it's like being a left-handed pitcher. You're always going to have a job in the IM or the medley relay if you can swim the butterfly. And, I'm just curious. I was talking to Timmy about it because one of his sons was a swimmer, and there's a whole lot of hurry up and wait, right? You have 3 events, and it's over a 3 or 4 hour period and so forth. What was it like being an Olympian? What was it like traveling to South Korea when you were a kid, and then Seoul, South Korea, and then Barcelona thereafter? I mean, what's the experience of being an athlete like? What's it like being in the village, that kind of thing?
And swimming against the Russians.
Oh,
yeah, back when they were the Soviets.
I've got so many stories I can tell you.
Go ahead, we've got time.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, let me say this. I always looked at it as like, I'm not just there to swim. I'm there to experience life. And so I was probably doing more than what the coaches and the team managers wanted me to do. For instance, I knew. So in my junior year, I won NCAAs in 1987 in 100 backstroke. And it was the first time I'd ever won a really big meet. And I realized, hey, maybe I have a shot at making the Olympic team. It was the first time it ever really dawned on me I had a shot at making 88. And I told my coach I wanted to take my senior year off and just train. And nobody redshirts at Harvard. You go 4 years and you're out. And so I was technically one of Harvard's first redshirts, and a term which they hate. And I trained for a year and knew that I was going to be bored out of my mind if all I was doing was training. So I decided to learn the Cyrillic alphabet and learn how to. So I taught myself the Cyrillic alphabet and how to speak like some basic Russian words. And I thought, I'm gonna, my last name Berkoff. It's actually Ukrainian, I think. And back then, Ukraine was part of Russia. So I think my father's side of the family is all from Kiev. So I had some kind of level of interest in that, and thought, well, this is really cool because we're at a crossroads politically. The wall is coming down. We all saw it coming. They're certainly loosening the leash on the public in the former Soviet bloc. Here's an opportunity, and I could, trade with the Russians and get some cool stuff. And that was my whole goal. I was going to make the Olympic team, and I learned Cyrillic alphabet so I could
barter with the Soviets.
Barter with the Soviets. So that was my goal, and I did. So I went to a meet in February of 1988 in Bonn, West Germany, and it was called the Arena Schwimmfest. It was in Bonn, and it happened to take place over the same weekend as either Mozart or Beethoven's 300th birthday. I can't remember. And the hotel, we were staying at the Königshof Hotel in Bonn, and that was also the site where they were holding this birthday party, a musical birthday party. So every night was like a party, and of course we were in the swim meet too, and we'd come back and forth to the swim meet. But the atmosphere was so festive and loose that the Russians kind of got an even looser leash. And at that point, I swam 100 back. So it was a short course meters, 25 meters race, and I was racing against Igor Polyansky, who eventually break Rick Carey's world record 3 times. And he was watching my underwater, and he came over to me and initiated the conversation and asked me, "How do you do that?" And so I explained to him what I was doing in kind of broken English, a little bit of Russian, and he was fascinated. And so I gave him some training sets to do. And then 3 months later, he broke the world record. So I was like, wait, I shouldn't tell him too much,
I was just going to say, you traitor, you're giving the Soviets
I know.
secrets. What's wrong with you?
But it didn't break 55, and that was my goal. I was going to be the first to break 55. I think he went 55 flat. He didn't break it.
You did what, 54.97, if I remember, something like that?
I went 54.95, then 54.91, and then 54.5 at the Olympics. So anyway, last night I make the Olympics, and I run into the Russians again. This is another story of why I was actually training with the Russians. So they give all the teams different times. At that point, they were giving all the teams different times to go to the pool and have the whole pool to themselves. And we went first one day, and the Russians were directly after us. And my coach, for some reason, hadn't shown up. So I was just waiting. And all of a sudden he shows up, and it's almost time for the Americans to get out of the pool. So I ended up getting in the water with the Russians. The Russians gave me a lane, and I did my own thing. But Polyansky swam over to me and he says, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "Hi." And I said, "Hey, do you want to trade some stuff after the swim meet?" And he's like, yes. And so we made a date, like the night after the last night of swimming, we would all get together at the Russian building and trade stuff. So I remembered this and swam through the meet, and I had a great meet, and he did too. And I was supposed to meet him in front of the Russian building right next door to the Canadian building in the Olympic Village. And he would come out and get me, and we'd go in the building and go to his room, and we'd trade stuff. And I had brought 2 giant shopping bags full of American T-shirts and stuff that I'm sure,
right?
Well, it was like all kinds of stuff, like anything with USA on it, and they would just eat it up. And so I see the Russian group of swimmers coming toward the building. This is at night, and they're walking toward the building, and they look at me, and they keep going, and they walk into the building, and I'm like, those bastards! It just blew me off. They're ghosting me, and I'm sitting here in front of the Canadian building, and they're not going to do this. And I just about getting ready to leave, and I get up, and one of the swimmers runs out of the building and says, David, follow me. And I run into the Russian building with my stuff. There are a bunch of them hanging out in the lobby, and they like huddle around me, kind of like so nobody else could see, and they push me into the elevator, and the door shuts, and they're very quiet. The door shuts, and all of a sudden this giant hand comes in the door and opens it back up. And I look out into the foyer where the elevators were, and there's Vladimir Salnikov standing there, all dressed up, and then there's the only way I can describe them is one must be like KGB, and the other two are Russian military in full regalia with medals hanging all over them. And I'm just like, oh shit. And everybody in the elevator is dead quiet. And I can see one of the military guys getting really upset and like speaking really quickly and angrily. And then Vladimir Salnikov turns to them and says something. And then they just start cracking up laughing. And then the door of the elevator is shut and we go upstairs. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? I have no idea what's going on. Did they just, set me up to get beat up or something like that? I had no idea.
They're going to off you in the hotel room.
Right? Exactly. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Am I going to create an international incident? And so I go into Polianski's room and they sit me down on the bed, and then they shut these rice paper doors that slide. So and I could hear them all the swimmers talking in the hallway, like in this room. And I'm sitting there all by myself, and I'm looking around, and Polianski's bed is literally covered with stuff from the Itaewon market, like leather jackets, shirts, sweatsuits, shoes, everything that he'd been buying there, and he was going to take back to Russia and sell or give to friends. I don't know. And then I'm just like looking around. I'm thinking, okay, I'm not the strongest guy, but I'm pretty damn quick. If something goes wrong, if they're like they're gonna beat me up or something like that and roll me, I'm at least getting out of there without a broken nose. And I was like, I could like hit one guy in the stomach and just like make a run for the stairwell and just run. And I'm pretty quick. And then so the doors open and there's like 5 guys standing there with their hands behind their back and all in a row. And it's like, I'm fucked. I'm not getting out of here. And the one guy who speaks pretty good English looks at me and says, David, we have one question. And I said, okay, what's that? He says, do you drink? I said, yes. And I said, oh, they like pulled out like Stolichnaya vodka and Korean soju. And we just started doing shots and drinking and trading. And I had a Russian English dictionary that we were passing back and forth. And then, we were communicating mostly by hand signs. And then I figured out one of the guys spoke fluent French and I spoke enough French to kind of pass. And so we were like, here we are having this incredible time talking about family and friends and funny experiences and people on the team we didn't like. And
supposed enemies you guys were supposed to be.
Yeah. And we were there for probably 3-4 hours trading
That's awesome.
stuff. And I finally at one point I just like I realized I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna pass out if I stay.
Oh, Russians can drink.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
God, yeah.
Oh yeah. I've been there. Yeah.
I said it's time for me to go, and they're like, no, you
same
stay.
time tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I gotta go. So at like 3 or 4 in the morning, I grabbed my 2 shopping bags that are now full of Russian stuff. I think I had 5 or 6 sets of Russian swimming sweatshirts and sweatpants, full regalia. I had Russian vodka. I had caviar. I had a banner signed by Russian cosmonauts. I have no idea who they are, but I had so much cool stuff, and I was like, I got to get out of here. So I stood up and I fell right back down again. And they're like, oh. They actually basically arm in arm carried me all the way back to the American building that night. And I went into the building and they're all like, goodbye, David. And all went back to their building. And I went to my room and I passed out. And then about 3 hours later, I woke up and my roommate, Craig Oppel, he's like, holy shit, man, what the hell? And I'm like, I think I was wearing a Russian sweatshirt at that point. And he's like, what happened? And I told him the story. He's like, that is amazing. It was probably one of the most amazing experiences I ever had as an athlete, just because at the time, people now don't understand and don't realize they see Russia as kind of like an enemy frenemy.
Oh, the Cold War, yeah. If you're
The Cold War,
not a certain age,
was so different, so different.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with the World Cup, it's like everybody who came here was like, Americans are so nice. I think I've lived overseas, and I think the general consensus is people like Americans, and I would imagine it was the same with you with the Soviets. People like the Soviets. Yeah. It's just the government and their behavior and their foreign policy or whatever. People like Americans. It's just some of the stuff that America does. I get it, But that's a wonderful story. Yeah. And Igor, by the way, had about 7 inches on you, wasn't he? About 6'5" or 6'6"?
Yeah, all those guys did. Sergey Zablat.
Timmy, you have no idea. 7 inches in swimming. I mean, that's like half a body length. I mean, and David beat these guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Polyansky and Zablatnov were both 6'5". I think Igor Polyansky lives in New Zealand. Or Australia, I'm not sure which one, and runs a swim school down there with his wife. So he moved out of Russia shortly after the wall came down. I know that. But these amazing stories. I got to part of things. I went to East Berlin and spent a week there, and I got to go through Checkpoint Charlie and had East Berlin girls asking us if they could hide in our luggage and they could take us across. We're like, no fucking way. We're not doing that. We figured they were probably Stasi plants that were testing us,
And there's something about sports too, right, David? That it's like the miracle on ice that resonates with people during the Cold War. There was something you were literally at the height of it in the 1980s into the early 1990s. It's probably just fascinating just to hear some of the stories that you know.
Yeah, just to seeing the change in the almost like all those. The wall came down in Berlin, and then by '92 the two Germanys were combined, but there was still the Russian Federation, and the Soviet Union was undergoing some big changes. But just seeing it was almost like in '92 the Russian Federation, the athletes almost felt like they were able to grow their hair out and just breathe and didn't seem like they were in such a stressful place emotionally. It was very different. Yeah.
David, my final question, I'm sure I know this just because I'm a father and I have children. I know what it's like. I would assume, was it more stressful for you when you were swimming, or is it more stressful watching your kids, particularly Catherine, compete in the Olympics? And tell everybody about your son, because he's got a hell of an interesting story real quick, but maybe you can answer him in order there. Is it more stressful for you to watch Catherine, or was it more stressful for you to swim? And tell us about your son. He's got an interesting story. And maybe we're capitalists on this podcast. Maybe we could get people in his boat. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say in some ways I was more stressed when I was an athlete. I was a very nervous athlete. It was probably the thing that pushed me out of competition, just the nerves. I would be up all night the night before my big races, and it became miserable. So in that sense, I was just a stress monster. It was hard for me to kind of let go of the race. I just wanted to race. When I was ready, and there's no off switch for me. With my daughter, it's hard to watch her because I am nervous for her, but is also a much more relaxed internally, I'd say. You just want the best for your kids, and I think that's where my nerves are. I just want her to be happy with how she does, and because I know how much of a perfectionist she is and how driven she is. I just want her to execute well and be happy with the result. So it's different. It's different for sure. But being in the sport for almost 50 years, actually 55 years, as an athlete, as a coach, as a dad, on the board of directors of USA Swimming, I've done it basically it all. I have a pretty good perspective and understanding of how hard it all is, and so I have that baseline, and it allows me to kind of be very reflective of how lucky Catherine is and how good she is, and so I don't. If she stops swimming tomorrow, she still have an amazing career, better than 99.9% of people who get into the sport. So I'm just super proud of her. And so I don't really get nervous anymore for her races because I know she's prepared as well as she can, and she's probably going to perform at a really super elite level. And I know it's something really good is going to happen. As far as my son, my son swam 3 years of college at University of Minnesota and was a finalist at his conference meet. He's a very good backstroker as well. It seems to be a family thing. And after he got out of the swimming, he really got into the outdoor lifestyle and has fallen in love with kayaking and rafting. And so he's been all over the world as a rafting kayak guide. He's been to India, worked for a company in India on the Brahmaputra River, which I understand is a huge river. And then the last couple seasons, in the summers, he's worked for a company in the United States and been in Oregon, Idaho, and Southern California, running rafting guide trips. And in the winters, he goes down to Chile and guides on the Fuda-Lafu River, which is one of the premier kayaking rivers in the world. So he's kind of found his little niche. He knows he's just like Catherine. His longevity in the sport at that level is probably limited. It just, like swimming, it beats you up after a while. Kayaking does, and so he's looking for the next step in life.
Cool. Timmy, do you have any final questions?
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we let the attorney get back to the attorneying?
Right.
So.
Oh yeah.
So you were one of John's heroes as a backstroker and things. I'm sure you've had your own heroes. These days society likes to deconstruct heroes and tear them down. Where do you think they should look for inspiration, or what lessons would you impart to, say, a young person who's just embarking on a life journey? What would you want them to know, or where would you want them to look for guidance?
I don't know if I had any heroes growing up, but I had people I certainly admired.
Mm-hmm.
I really admired Pablo Morales, who's more of a contemporary of mine. I just love the way he held himself, and he was just humble and had incredible success as a young swimmer at elite level in '84, and then in '88 he missed the team altogether, and then came back in '92 and made the team and won a gold medal. And I just always felt like I just love that story, and I love how he held himself out and held him and just never gave up.
Mm-hmm.
I've always admired Paul Newman for some strange reason. I love how he was an actor, and then he got into making salad
That's
dressing.
That's not strange, David.
And
he's a humanitarian.
And
race car driver.
Yeah, race car driver. I mean, he's done it all. He's just kind of
he's handsome, which makes it even worse. Can't you be ugly?
Yeah. I liked his diversity and his willingness to kind of like just do it, and just go where he wanted to go. And so that's kind of been my thing, is like find your passion and run with it. So and I think you're right. In this world, the media is so quick to destroy people, whether they do something un-PC or they make a mistake or they get a DUI. I mean, we're all human. That's the thing. I think we forget when we're trying to, look at somebody famous and hold them high on a pedestal. They're just human. They're just like you and me. They've just done something pretty amazing. And so when we try to look for idols and idolatry in the world, that's the problem. When I think we need to realize that we are all capable of doing amazing things, and that's what's important, that we should all take inspiration from others rather than comparison. And that's what I try to do now, is I find myself judging and comparing and competing even in my daily process. And I think that all comes from my competitive swimming background. But I'm trying to be more mindful with that, and rather than be in a comparison or judgmental mindset, but instead just try to inspire people, and inspiration through giving a compliment or showing somebody how to do something better, or asking questions, or just engaging with people and spreading kind of good natured vibes. I think that's I think what people should be aspiring to, because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to put our foot in our mouths. We're all going to do things that we're ashamed of. I think the important part is, what do we do with that? Do we deny it? Do we blame somebody else for it? Or do we stand up and say, yeah, I made a mistake and I'm going to try and be a better person for it and learn from it. And I think that's what a real hero is or somebody, the type of person we should be admiring, the one who can say, I'm a human being and I make mistakes and I'm sorry.
And I fixed them, or try to,
or just learn from them. You know, there's no guarantee.
I didn't expect to get a tear from listening to David Berkoff, blastoff. Like this is. I mean, it's like when you go to the movies and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this movie's heavy. You know, wow, David, I'm impressed. Here. No, I mean, it was wonderful. Thank you very much.
It also connects with your Russian swimmer story, right? In as much as our humanity gets us into trouble, it's what gets us out of it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
David, did you have a hero or someone, or do you want to just maybe Pablo Morales? Because that was such a wonderful story there. We always do a hero on Whack Job. And it sounds like you've got my whack job, as I may mention to people, they know this. I tend not to be a terribly big fan of the person that occupies the White House, but I find his enablers to be even worse. And so my whack job typically is J.D. Vance, or at least he's in the top 3 nominee every week without fail. Do you have somebody you'd like to honor or call out, say, hey, you're a whack job, or hey, you're a hero? Nothing major.
Again, I'm trying to. I know who I think is a whack job in the world, and J.D. Vance is. He's a supplicant. I think unfortunately for him and for society, he's decided that his political ambitions are more important than holding his boss accountable. But that's his decision, and history will judge him harshly, I think, and that's good enough for me.
One of my favorite lines, David. John F. Kennedy wrote the Pulitzer Prize-winning book called Profiles in Courage, and Ted Koppel, the former Nightline host, used to say, "There's a reason it's only one volume."
Yeah,
because it's in such short supply. So.
It's. Unfortunately, that's too much of our instant gratification world is the way it is, and that's why people are doing the things they're doing. I think we have a lot of narcissistic personalities in politics and public light right now, which is unfortunate because I think that's what kids think is normal and we should aspire to. And there's enough whack jobs to go around, so I don't need to point out any one. Just look anywhere you want, you'll find one.
Yeah.
And it's just not normal behavior. And I think that's what we need to get back to is like, hey, let's all try, and we're all in this together. And, until we start working together, this isn't going to change. And is not, I don't know if there's any real answer to it. I try and focus on the positive now. It's funny. I have a friend, and we always run into each other when we're walking on. I go on a 3 to 5 mile hike every morning with my dog, and try and clear my mind. And I ran into this friend of mine, and she was going through some issues, and she was asking me for kind of some, I wouldn't say advice, but maybe just some perspective. And I said, I've got 20 to 30 years left on this planet. I don't have time for negativity. I try to let it go as quickly as I can and move on and be positive. And I think watching the news is just reinforcing negativity. I just try to avoid it. I'm like, it doesn't surprise me. We're always sinking to a new low. I hope we can start raising to a new high, and that becomes the news line at 6 that so and so did something amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, are you familiar with the Babylon Bee, David?
Yeah.
Timmy and I tend to be a fan of it. Part of it, the reason is I think, and being a classic liberal, I'll be the first person to tell you that liberals killed comedy. I mean, lighten up, right? But that being said, one of my favorites was after Trump won in 2016, and the headline said, well, there was one headline that says America chooses the glass ceiling yet again. And he beat Hillary Clinton. That was number 1. And number 2, they had another one when he won, and it said, report says, in spite of Trump's victory, it's still never okay to act like Donald J. Trump. I said, that's probably true. Yeah.
That's right.
So, But I can't tell you. Listen, I don't mean to embarrass you, but you were one of my swimming heroes growing up. You sound like a hell of a nice guy, and we'd love to have you back on anytime. In fact, I think it'd be kind of neat if you spoke to your daughter, and we could do a father-daughter discussion, because I'd be interested in hearing some stories from Catherine as well. But I can't thank you enough, David. It was absolutely an absolute delight, and you're welcome back anytime. But I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've probably got about another 5 or 6 blog episodes for you as far as my stories.
I want to hear some of them. I do. Yeah.
Some of them are a little more R-rated, but.
But really, I appreciate it, David. We'll let you get back to being a lawyer, and you are welcome back anytime, sir. It's been an absolute delight. So I was floored by some of the stories you told. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and very nice meeting you, even if it's just by voice.
Yeah,
absolutely, sir. Timmy, I like talking to people that I grew up admiring, and I did appreciate David saying, look, heroes, idolatry is silly because we're human beings and we all make mistakes. But you know what? Hearing some of his stories and perspective on life, I was even more impressed. I wanted to talk to him just because I watched him growing up swimming, but man, he was an interesting fellow, didn't you think?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I just, having grown up in the Cold War, right? Those stories.
Yeah, that hit me too. Yeah.
Yeah. That was fascinating.
And you forget, right? Like he's having shots with the Soviets, and he's competing against these guys. And you're right. I people who are not of a certain age just don't remember. I mean, it was, if the Soviets said left, we said right. If they said up, we said down. I mean, it's just right. And people forget. Yeah.
Yeah. So. I mean, in East Germany, former East Germany is now living free because of choices in humanity, right? The positive power of humanity.
Right. Well, Timmy, it was great talking to you, and I'm just smiling from ear to ear, because you talk to one of your heroes and then he turns out to be more impressive. Sometimes your heroes let you down. Nope, not this case. Yeah. So, yeah. But Timmy, have a great weekend, and thank you again, Mr. Berkoff. You're welcome back on anytime. We'd love to talk to you and your daughter. This is John Boland signing off, saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances. And this is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.